As a physician, you're going to encounter many patients, a number of whom might seem to be without hope. So how do you provide that hope, particularly if you're not feeling the best yourself? You need to cultivate your own sources of that living replenishment, that hope, so that you can instill it and infuse it and bring it to others who come to you hurting. In medicine, we learn a great deal about the various functions of the body, how to effectively treat illness, how to make an informed diagnosis. But we really don't learn enough about hope. You might be thinking, I don't practice oncology, critical care, end-of-life, geriatrics. Why is it so important to me? But you bring hope each and every day to those who are drug addicted, to those who might be living on their next paycheck or looking for a place to live. Before we write off hope as some abstract, theoretical, fluffy, feel-good word or concept, we need to talk about the reality. When 30, 40, 50% or more of doctors want to exit and leave the profession, you might ask, where's the hope? Burnout at epidemic levels. If doctors can't provide hope, how are patients going to have hope? There's solutions. Without a degree of hope, we cannot move forward. But when we have hope, patients thrive, families thrive, communities thrive, colleagues thrive, even countries and civilizations thrive. However, there may be some days when you don't feel hopeful, but feel overwhelmed, far from optimistic, maybe even on your way to burnout. So how do you actually provide real hope to others when your own tank might be empty? I'm Dr. Chad Brands with Mentoring Docs, and I'm hopeful. In education, even in our professional circles, we don't give enough coverage to this incredibly impactful, powerful topic of hope. It's easy to dismiss, but the need is real in a world where hope just seems to be in short supply. So much depends on you and I knowing how and then being equipped to instill and inspire hope in others after cultivating it within our own lives. Without hope, we simply cannot go on. Without hope, people give up, lose the vitality of life, no matter who you are or what you do. Hope is the difference between giving up and getting up. The classmate beside you, a family member in a tough situation, a colleague walking through a deep, dark personal valley, or a professional one, a patient who I had the privilege to help in his hopelessness and despair. In a few minutes, hope was returning. It's been said we can go days without water, weeks without food, but not a single day without hope. All of us need to instill a measure of hope into the lives of the people that we're privileged to meet with and serve. As you work in those places or spaces or study subjects that don't have a record of being hopeful, challenge that thought. It's not just the cancer specialists or the ICU nurses that dare to bring hope with courage as they bring it to dying patients. I was recently picking up my vehicle at the local mechanic shop. The desk manager, diagnosing and trying to treat my ailing, aging vehicle, she said, I think it's my job to get out of bed and infuse optimism into these people every day. So how do you provide that hope, particularly if you're not feeling the best yourself? You need to cultivate your own sources of that living replenishment, that hope, so that you can instill it and infuse it and bring it to others who come to you hurting. There's always hope in hardship. Hope's on display at the local homeless shelter, where those have fallen on tough times through unemployment or struggles with addiction, domestic violence, among other reasons, find neighbors willing to help them get back up on their feet with meals, job training, clothing, never giving up on hope for an individual situation. Hope is sharing that gift of your presence by taking the time to visit a colleague or a friend who's hospitalized, bringing a small gift such as an encouraging book. Optimism is a precursor and a key component to bringing that hope. We can take an optimistic approach to life situations, whatever it throws at us, combine that mindset with small doses of extra energy to break through even the most discouraging situations in life. Here's another example. This one comes from the somewhat bleak, if not discouraging, airline industry. I was on a plane recently at one of the world's busiest airports, where instead of just giving in to the weather pattern of the day and surrendering to the industry's yet another delay, this airline pilot came out of the cockpit. He took the microphone, addressed the entire cabin of passengers, and indicated there were a few extenuating circumstances around the weather, throwing in a bit of expert pilot speak about knots and wind shear. He inspired confidence in that professional demeanor as a mid-career pilot. He really did not overpromise. He conveyed that he was determined to fly if he could do it safely and was going to do everything he could to make it happen. He was looking for a very short time window in the weather that he thought was likely going to open. His voice was optimistic, upbeat, clear, and positive, sharing that he'd come back as soon as he could with a weather and flight status update. He did. He had everyone's attention again. Stay on the plane or right at the gate, because in his experience, it was likely going to be a go, a quick reboard. Seriously, when does that ever happen? A pilot stepping out, directly, clearly addressing the passengers, and completely changing the mood in the cabin. I'll always remember this scene because he was such a standout example in an industry that otherwise doesn't have standouts. The plane did leave ahead of time. People made their connections. That pilot's clear, grounded optimism made all the difference, and he delivered on that optimism. A true standout, hopeful approach. History is built on hope. I love reading about history. Why? Because there's so many hopeful lessons that we can take away and put them into our own lives as we seek to help others. Hopeful leaders in times of great crisis. We like to look back on these lessons of history and we think, wow, that's the set in stone outcome. But at the time, that outcome wasn't known. They had to dial in and with incredible determination, remain hopeful and optimistic about setting a course and a direction in motion that others could follow, instilling and infusing hope. Let's take George Washington. That first ragtag army had no uniforms, no shoes, not ammunition, supplies at critical times. Even when the odds were completely stacked against him and the army, he pushed back, built an inside spy network to outmaneuver the enemy. Abraham Lincoln also had incredible personal challenges as he took the presidency. A nation in civil war, family illness, the death of his own son, difficulties with military command, generals that didn't want to, yet Lincoln was dedicated to keeping the nation together. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Here's a young adult survivor of polio, supporting himself before the U.S. Congress. It's hardly a day after the horrific Pearl Harbor attack. Some of my patients attested to being on the runways there when the sky got black. And he said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. They believed in a cause bigger than themselves, freedom. And they rallied people of every background and ability to do their part in victory over tyranny. Hundreds of great books attest to the amazing courage, endurance, and leadership of those times. Hope is defiant. And that's why we remember their names today, because they remained optimistic. Much of it was in their mindset. The sheer willpower and drive from deep within to live hopeful and optimistically, no matter the circumstances. You're not a political leader. The lesson is still the same. These leaders passed hope on, not just by what they said, but what they did. History also gives us some lessons of ingenuity. These leaders had to find difficult to navigate paths forward. Churchill, that hope for a brighter future gave him and those around him the strength to persevere, despite the overwhelming odds and hardships that were being faced. And many others come to mind. Creative thinking, courageous when the path was not clear. And that same courage and clarity is needed today, in every field. In difficult times, we're all at risk to just fall into the trap of an easy solution out of a book or something that we've pulled up online. But keep an open mind. Be creative, optimistic, forward-looking. Hope starts with one small moment in time. Making a choice. One person decides to bring it. You can bring and instill hope to the people that you meet every day. Inside the office exam room, in the coffee shops, wherever you are. Bring hope. I'm not talking about some cartoon version of characterized hope, where you just put on a fake smile, an avatar, and pretend. I'm talking about authentically inspiring your patients to live with hope and bringing them the encouragement they need on the next step of their journey. It's bold, it leads, it shows up when people are hurting, when the outcomes are unclear, and says, we are not done yet. And no matter where you find yourself, you can be part of that story. What's one way you can bring hope this week? Share this video, leave a comment down below. Let's build a hopeful community together. Let's live well as we bring hope.